At the start of his day, Jacob Taylor never anticipated being treated as though he didn't exist. He had made an appointment, showed up on time, and was prepared for his meeting, but what unfolded when he arrived at the building was something he hadn't expected. It was a mild Wednesday morning in May when Jacob, a man who had spent his entire life working with his hands, tilling soil, constructing structures, and nurturing crops, found himself in the lobby of a financial institution, feeling like a ghost. Jacob, 62 years old, hailed from Oakwood Ridge, a quiet town nestled at the base of the Blue Ridge Mountains. He was no stranger to the long, cold mornings, the smell of fresh earth after the rain, or the roughness of labor that left his hands toughened and scarred. He had spent decades repairing fences, herding livestock, and tending to the old tractors on his farm. He wasn't a man who sought attention. His presence commanded respect without him having to say much. Yet, when Jacob arrived at the Willowbrook Financial Services branch in downtown Northfield at exactly 9:50 a.m. for his 10 a.m. appointment with Ms. Olivia Carmichael, it felt like his time and presence didn't count. He had never met Ms. Carmichael, but her name was clearly listed in the confirmation email he'd received. In his left hand, Jacob carried a worn leather case, a gift from his late wife, which had seen better days but still held immense sentimental value. He wore his best shirt, flannel, freshly pressed, his jeans neatly tucked into sturdy boots, and his beard trimmed that morning, though appearance wasn't something he particularly concerned himself with. The bank lobby was sleek and modern, with bright white marble floors, hanging lights in geometric designs, and the subtle scent of fresh coffee mixed with polished wood. Jacob paused for a moment at the entrance, tipping his hat politely before heading to the receptionist's desk. "Good morning," he greeted softly, his voice calm but firm. "Jacob Taylor. I'm here for my 10 o'clock with Ms. Carmichael." The young woman behind the counter, who looked to be in her late 20s, glanced up at him with a disinterested expression. Her hair was neatly styled, and her business attire immaculate. Her nameplate read, Ella. Without missing a beat, she tapped away at the keyboard. "You're on the list. Have a seat. Ms. Carmichael will be with you shortly," Ella said, barely acknowledging his presence. Jacob nodded, removing his hat and taking a seat in one of the plush chairs near the large windows. The sunlight streamed through the glass, casting a soft glow across the sleek floor. He placed his leather case on his lap and settled in, fully expecting to wait. He wasn't in a rush, at least not at first. He knew the rhythms of life. Delays were inevitable. But as time ticked by, his patience began to thin. By 10:30, he noticed two other individuals enter, one in a tailored suit, the other draped in an expensive scarf and high heels. Both were greeted promptly and ushered to the back without delay, their names barely needing to be spoken. Jacob shifted in his chair. His quiet observation soon turned into a growing discomfort. By 10:45, he stood up, his frustration simmering just below the surface. He approached the counter again, his hand lightly gripping his hat. "Excuse me," he said, his tone now firmer. "I've been here nearly an hour, and I had an appointment." Ella, still looking at her phone, didn't bother to look up. "Ms. Carmichael is with another client. She'll be with you soon," she said, her voice distracted. Jacob's jaw clenched, but he nodded, returning to his seat. Something wasn't right, but he chose, at that moment, to give her the benefit of the doubt. Perhaps, he thought, there was a good reason for the delay. At 11 o'clock, the door opened again, and a young man in a sharp gray suit walked in. He was greeted by Ella with a warm smile and immediately ushered behind the double doors without a word. The man didn't even need to announce his name. That was the tipping point. Jacob stood up again, this time with a hint of indignation creeping into his voice. "Excuse me," he said, now loud enough to be heard. "I've been here over an hour and a half. I had an appointment at 10 o'clock, and that young man walked in and was seen right away. I'm still waiting." Ella didn't respond immediately, her eyes still glued to her screen. Jacob's patience was gone, but he held his ground. Something was wrong, and he wasn't going to let it go unnoticed any longer. Ella blinked slowly, her face momentarily twitching in annoyance. "Sir, Miss Carmichael is with another client right now," she said, her voice flat. "You'll be called when it's your turn." "But I had an appointment at 10 o'clock," Jacob replied, his patience fraying. It's almost noon. Ella's response was unyielding. She's finishing up. Just wait. Jacob's face flushed, not out of embarrassment but from a growing frustration. He had spent his whole life cultivating the earth, building things from the ground up, yet here, in this spotless, polished world, it felt as though his labor meant nothing. His hands, worn from decades of work, seemed out of place among the sleek furnishings and the aroma of freshly brewed coffee in the air. He sank back into his seat, gripping his leather case a bit tighter. His eyes, instead of wandering, remained locked on the frosted glass doors. Each time they opened, another customer strolled through, quickly greeted and ushered in, while he was left waiting, ignored. The message was clear: this place wasn't for him. At 12:15, Jacob made up his mind. With a steady movement he stood up, adjusted his hat, and walked past the counter. He bypassed the forced smiles and the scripted apologies, heading straight toward the frosted doors. "Sir, you can't go back there," Ella called, her voice tinged with alarm. Jacob didn't respond. His boots clicked softly against the polished floor as he opened the door, stepping into a quiet hallway lined with closed offices. He scanned the space until he saw her, Olivia Carmichael, sitting behind a large desk, typing away on her keyboard, her phone resting beside her. She wasn't with anyone. She hadn't been with anyone the entire time. Jacob knocked once on the doorframe, then stepped inside. "Ms. Carmichael," he said, his voice calm but carrying a firm determination. Olivia looked up, startled. "Mr. Taylor," she said, her brow furrowing. "You should have waited to be called." "I've been waiting," Jacob replied, his tone steady but unmistakably resolute. "For 2 hours." Her expression tightened. "You can't just walk in like this." "I have every right to," Jacob said, his voice unwavering but controlled. "I made an appointment. I arrived on time. I sat there quietly while others walked past me. I was ignored, and now I'm here to be treated with the respect I deserve." There was a moment of silence. Olivia opened her mouth to respond, but the door opened behind Jacob. "Mr. Taylor," a calm voice called. Jacob turned to see a tall man in his 60s, wearing a navy suit with gold cufflinks, his face sharp with age but radiating authority. His presence immediately quieted the room. "Mr. Taylor," the man repeated, a slight apologetic smile on his face. "I thought you were here to meet Olivia." "I am," Jacob replied, his voice firm. "But I've been sitting there for 2 hours while others, dressed in their suits and ties, were ushered through without hesitation. I'm starting to wonder if folks like me even belong here." The man blinked, glanced at Olivia, then motioned toward the hallway. "Come with me." Jacob followed him down the corridor into a large conference room with a polished oak table stretching across the center. The man gestured for Jacob to sit, then took a seat himself, folding his hands together. "I'm sorry this happened," the man began. "That shouldn't have occurred. But I can tell you, it happens far too often." Jacob exhaled deeply, leaning back in the chair. "I'm not looking for an apology," he said. "I'm looking for answers." The man nodded. "And you deserve them. It's true, institutions like this one, and mine in particular, often forget that not all wealth is worn on the outside." Jacob's eyes narrowed. "I'm not asking for special treatment. I want fair treatment." "You'll get it," the man said, his voice assuring. True to his word, within the next hour, the loan paperwork Jacob had brought in was thoroughly reviewed. Not only that, it was personally handled by the regional director himself. By the time the meeting wrapped up, the man stood, offering Jacob a firm handshake. "You made a statement today," he said, "and I hope everyone out there hears it." As Jacob exited the conference room and made his way back through the lobby, Ella glanced up briefly. Her cheeks were pale, and her lips were tight. She said nothing. Jacob nodded once, his movements steady, and walked out into the bright afternoon. The sun had shifted in the sky, and a gentle breeze rustled the leaves along the sidewalk. He pulled his phone from his pocket. A notification blinked across the screen. "Loan approved." Jacob smiled, not because of the approval itself, but because of what it represented. Not just for him, but for everyone like him. He wasn't invisible. Not anymore. From that moment on, anyone who walked through those glass doors with the same quiet dignity in their hands wouldn't be overlooked again.